There are some critical elements of creating this action plan that I have quite honestly figured out by making all the errors you can make. And so I want to just cover a few of the key basics for making up your action plan. Welcome back. We're now ready for Chapter 7 out of the book, Fun at Work. And Chapter 7 is the action plan that leads to success. So in the last video, Chapter 6, we talked about how you come up with a strategic plan. So in that chapter, we talked about a particular strategy. We're going to market to this area. We're going to take over that sector, just whatever it might be. We have to hire 3 people. So that's the strategy. Now, there has to be an action plan, step by step by step, that you click off to get that strategy executed and accomplished. So I always, at this point, like to just pretty much turn those steps over to the next level of management. So the vice president can run it, the business manager, the office manager, whoever is in charge of executing it. Those people have their boots on the ground, so to speak. They're on the front lines. They completely understand the available resources, which I spoke about in the last video, and they understand and can integrate the new steps of this action plan with the ongoing steps. So you can oversee it. I would maybe oversee it, but I just kind of like to turn it over and then say, now before we execute it, bring it back to me and just make sure that I know what's happening in my business. So that being said, there are some critical elements of creating this action plan that I have quite honestly figured out by making all the errors you can make. And so I want to just cover a few of the key basics for making up your action plan. First of all, you're going to sit down on a computer. Obviously, it's easier with a computer and a Word document, and you just start writing out all the things that have to be done. And what I like to do is just throw them down on the piece of paper as it pops into my mind, and then put them in sequence. I don't worry about if they're in sequence or not, as I'm just throwing all the steps down on a piece of paper. I try to think with it that way, but then now I'm down at step 6 and I'm like, oh my goodness, this needs to be step 1. So this is where it's very easy to do on a Word document. And a critical part of this is that every step has to be done in a reasonably short period of time. If you have a particular step that is going to take, I don't know, a week, and there's 3 or 4 or 5 things in this one item that have to be done in order to count that step completed, then just write everything down, the 4, 5, 6 steps that need to be done. That's just my advice. If it starts to get too drawn out, then you give this, to a staff member. They're going to look at that and say, oh, that's going to take me too long. I can't work that into my day. So my advice on making up the sequence of steps is be sure that every step can be done in a reasonably short period of time. Then that step has to be assigned to a person. So somebody has to be accountable for that step. And that person needs to be given a targeted due date. So you're going to assign this, to your staff member, John, and he's responsible for having this done by Friday. Now, Abby has some great videos that she's done on a software program that she found, and the software program is free. It's called Asana, A-S-A-N-A, and she can include a link up there or down here. And it's a real awesome software program that we actually use to run all of our clients' programs on. So Asana is awesome because you can then designate this particular step to a staff member and the due date, and they will get reminders. They will get email notifications. And then they can also check it off when it's done, and you're going to know as a supervisor over the area that it's done. That leads to the next step as far as creating an action plan that works, and that is there has to be accountability. So yes, you're going to give this step to your staff member, John. It's due by Friday, but then you need to check up. Now you can maybe use Asana to confirm that it's done. Check up with John, how you doing on that target that needs to be done by Friday. However you might want to do it, and Asana has a great way of doing that, but there has to be some accountability. It's not like Friday's deadline misses, Monday comes around, you go speak with John. Yeah, I had a real busy week. I'll get to it as soon as I can. All right, your strategic plan is going to be blown up. It's just not going to happen. And it's not important enough. You, the owner, the creator of the strategic plan, have not made it important enough to John, who's supposed to be executing the tactical action steps now, and it's not that big of a deal, and you let it slide. So, no, this is important. You put all the work into your strategy, and there has to be accountability. Now, the final step for me on an action plan that leads to results is there has to be a way to monitor the results. So you have a strategy that you're working out, and you have this action plan, and you have all of your steps, and then the final step on the action plan has to be some statistical monitoring. Like what are the key performance indicators that we are going to be looking at to have evidence that this action plan actually is leading to the expansion. So did you get out more proposals? Did it lead to more closes? Whatever it might be, we lowered the overhead by this percentage. And I suggest that these are monitored every week. There are different graph programs. I love graphs, line graphs. I don't necessarily like bar graphs, and I definitely don't like looking at numbers on a piece of paper because it doesn't show you a trend. So there are different statistical programs out there that'll help you create graphs. So the final step on the action plan needs to be creating a statistic, if it doesn't already exist, creating a statistic, and then the person who's responsible for running this overall program needs to be very clear on the statistical results that are expected. So this is something that has to be run by the CEO or the owner, and that's where the strategy comes in. And I like including the person who's going to be writing the tactical action steps in on that strategy session, and then I turn it over to them, create the plan, bring it to me before we start to execute the plan, and we need to have accountability, who's responsible for every step with due dates. So if you just keep running things like this, it's really, really, quite honestly, very easy to expand your company. That's chapter 7. Come back next week and I'll have chapter 8.